You consider yourself a rational, good person, guided by intelligence and a sense of right and wrong. Imagine one day you find yourself in a position of power. Maybe you're leading a company, a community, even a country. You step into the role confident in your knowledge and principles. You believe your intelligence is a shield that will guide you, that your moral compass is unwavering. And yet, as days pass, something begins to shift. In meetings, people no longer challenge your ideas. They seem eager to agree, to please you. At first, it feels like validation, confirmation that you were right. But slowly, subtly, it starts insulating you from the truth. Dissenting voices grow quieter. Uncomfortable facts are swept out of sight to avoid displeasing you. You find yourself wrapped in a warm cocoon of agreement. And in that comfort, your once sharp mind begins to dull. The critical questions you used to ask now rarely arise. Decisions that would have troubled your conscience before are made with barely a thought, justified quickly as necessary or for the greater good. You tell yourself you're doing what needs to be done, but a quiet truth lurks at the edge of your awareness. You've stopped listening to contrary opinions, even to your own doubts. This is how intelligence dies in the shadow of power, not with a loud collapse, but with a quiet, almost polite suffocation. It doesn't matter how brilliant you are or how many facts you know. If you stop reflecting, if you stop questioning yourself, the light of your intelligence can dim. What replaces it is a kind of moral blindness. You still have the same brain, the same degrees on the wall, but somehow you don't see what you once saw. You overlook ethical nuances, human consequences. You become, in a word, stupid. Not in IQ, but in a deeper, more troubling way. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a German thinker who lived through one of history's darkest times, warned about this very phenomenon. He observed a paradox, that stupidity can be more dangerous than malice, especially when it afflicts those in power. It sounds counterintuitive. How could foolishness be worse than evil? But Bonhoeffer noticed that an intelligent person under the sway of power or ideology can become blind to reality and morality in ways a malicious person might not. A malicious person usually knows they're doing harm. A morally blind person doesn't even see the harm they cause. And that, he realized, is a frighteningly potent danger. Bonhoeffer's paradox isn't only about the person at the top losing clarity. It's also about the many people below, the ones who simply follow along. Imagine yourself not as the leader now, but as one of the others in the room. A decision is made that you sense is wrong. Maybe it's an unethical policy at your company or a cruel law in your society. Your instincts flare up. This isn't right. But you look around and see everyone else nodding, eyes downcast, quietly agreeing. The message is clear. Don't rock the boat. In that moment, a conflict erupts within you. Do you speak up or stay obedient? Part of you wants to trust your own judgment, but another part feels the weight of authority and the comfort of belonging. It's easier to assume the leader knows best, that the group must see something you don't. And so you swallow your doubts. You think, maybe I'm mistaken. Everyone else seems fine with this. Who am I to question? You follow the order, you enforce the policy, you play your part. This is how moral blindness spreads. Obedience, conformity. We often think of obedience as a virtue. Respect your elders, follow the rules. But there comes a point where obedience becomes a poison. In the shadow of strong authority, obedience can seduce you into suspending your own moral judgment. You stop thinking critically because someone else is thinking for you. The responsibility lifts off your shoulders, and you feel a grim relief. After all, if it's not your decision, it's not your fault, right? But by surrendering your judgment, you also surrender a piece of your conscience. You become, as Bonhoeffer said, a mindless instrument of someone else's will. The frightening part is, it doesn't feel like evil. It feels like duty. You believe you're doing what you're supposed to, maybe even what's morally right, because an authority told you so. And so, step by obedient step, ordinary people carry out plans that their own minds and hearts might have resisted, if only they had dared to question. History offers painful examples of horrific acts committed by legions of ordinary people simply following orders. It's easy to assume those people were all monsters, but many were likely much like you, decent, educated, kind in their personal lives. Yet, under the spell of authority and group pressure, they became agents of destruction without ever making a conscious choice to do evil. They handed over their agency to the powers above them. Bonhoeffer witnessed this in Nazi Germany, where a whole society's obedience was weaponized. The docile, unthinking compliance of the masses proved to be not just weakness, but an incredibly dangerous force. When no one questions, when no one speaks out, lies flourish and cruelty becomes normalized. Obedience creates an abyss of accountability. Everyone is just doing their job, and in the end, nobody takes responsibility as the world burns. In such a climate, intelligence doesn't vanish overnight. It is slowly repurposed. Your clever mind, instead of asking, "Is this right?" starts asking, "How can I best do what I'm told?" Critical thought is replaced by cunning ways to implement directives. Moral consideration yields to technical efficiency, and so the blindness deepens, spread by the very human desire to fit in and do what's expected. How do we live with ourselves once we've chosen obedience over conscience? The answer is, we rationalize. We weave stories to justify our actions, to quiet that inner voice that whispers of our betrayal. Picture yourself after that fateful meeting or that day's work, coming home and looking in the mirror. There's a flicker of unease in your eyes. You remember the decision you went along with, the order you carried out. In that fleeting moment, your conscience clears its throat as if to speak. Was that really right? Immediately, your mind rushes in with answers. I had no choice. If I didn't do it, someone else would. I'm just doing my job. It's for the greater good. Each thought is like a brick, and brick by brick, you wall off the guilt. This is the art of rationalization, using your intelligence not to seek truth, but to defend your ego and comfort. And the smarter you are, the more elaborate these defenses can become. Perhaps you tell yourself a grand story, that the cruel policy will ultimately help more people, that the ends will justify the means, or that loyalty and order are more important than your personal misgivings. If the decision came from high above, maybe you even sanctify it, convincing yourself that the leader or the cause knows better than you do, so your doubt must be wrong. In the privacy of your mind, you reshape wrong into right, or at least into necessary. Notice what's happening here. Your moral compass was pointing one way, but you're forcing it to point another, through sheer will and clever argument. The tragedy is that you still think of yourself as righteous, perhaps even more so than before. You've proven your loyalty, you've shown discipline, you've sacrificed your discomfort for the team or the nation. These rationalizations feel like solid ground to stand on, something to ease the sting of that earlier doubt. But in reality, they are quicksand. The more you rely on them, the deeper you sink into moral numbness. Entire societies have sunk into that quicksand. Propaganda and patriotic slogans, complex justifications and ideological rhetoric. These are just mass rationalizations, shared stories that turn away collective eyes from a horrendous reality. People tell each other, it must be done. We have no choice, until almost everyone believes it, or at least accepts it. In Nazi Germany, a civilized modern nation convinced itself that unspeakable atrocities were justified as necessary for the nation's survival and glory. It didn't happen all at once. It was a steady drip of rationalizations, day by day, silencing the objections of both the heart and mind. In your own life, the stakes might not be as enormous, but the pattern can be eerily similar. Think of a time you witnessed wrongdoing. Perhaps a coworker was mistreated or you saw someone cheated, and you stood by. Later, to ease the discomfort, you might have thought, well, maybe it wasn't my place to intervene, or maybe that person had it coming, or if it were truly bad, someone else would have stopped it. These little stories we tell ourselves are meant to protect us from pain and guilt, but they also distance us from the truth of our own values. With each rationalization, the voice of conscience grows fainter. The inner protests die down. You feel more at peace, but it's not a noble peace. It's the eerie calm of a moral coma. And as within, so without. If you've convinced yourself there's nothing wrong, you certainly won't speak up about it. You remain outwardly silent or even supportive. The easy explanations have won, and the truth has been subdued, both in your mind and in the world around you. And so, a deadly silence begins to set in, both the silence inside your heart and the silence in public where no one dares to say, this is wrong. Silence. It appears so harmless, just the absence of words. Yet in times of moral crisis, silence is a powerful act, a choice that shapes the world. When faced with wrong, staying quiet is itself a message, one that wrongdoers welcome and victims despair to hear. It says, carry on, no one will stop you. It says, your suffering doesn't matter enough to break the calm. Think of a bully on a playground when no teacher intervenes, or a corrupt official when no citizen speaks out. The silence of those who know better doesn't just fail to stop the harm, it condones it. Evil craves silence. In the dark of unchallenged quiet, cruelty and lies grow bold. It's often said that for evil to triumph, it only needs good people to do nothing. Each moment of silence in the face of injustice is a small betrayal by the onlooker, a signal to the perpetrator that everything is okay. Why do we choose silence? Often out of fear. Fear of standing out, fear of retaliation, fear of being wrong or alone. Sometimes it's doubt. We second-guess our perspective. Maybe it's not my place. Maybe it's not that bad. Or we assume someone else will speak up. Silence can even come from cynicism, the bleak belief that speaking won't change anything. In the moment, staying quiet feels safer, simpler. Your heart might pound with the urge to speak, but your lips stay shut, and the moment passes. Afterwards, in the quiet of your mind, that choice can haunt you. You remember the face of the person hurt, or the principle violated, and you know you failed to stand when it mattered. That is a heavy weight on the soul, a subtle shame that accumulates over time, eating away at your self-respect. Meanwhile, your silence has given permission for the injustice to continue. In a regime of terror, silence from the populace is taken as consent. In a family or workplace, silence from bystanders lets the abuse persist. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the man whose paradox we're exploring, lived by a different code. He was a rare voice of truth amid a deafening silence. While so many around him in Nazi Germany chose self-preserving quiet, Bonhoeffer spoke out, openly defying a tyrannical power. He understood the cost of silence. He said that not to speak is to speak, not to act is to act, meaning doing nothing is itself a choice with moral consequences. He believed that silence in the face of evil is itself evil. That conviction ultimately cost him his life. He was executed for his role in resisting the Nazi regime. His fate is a stark reminder that speaking up can be incredibly hard, even dangerous. It explains why so many people fell into fearful silence. But Bonhoeffer's courage also shines a light forward. He refused to let fear turn him into another silent accomplice. His life and death pose a challenge. When everything around you pressures you to stay quiet, can you still hear your inner voice clearly enough to speak out? Imagine the strength of spirit it took for someone like him, a quiet scholar and pastor, to resist a murderous ideology when most around him would not. He saw even intelligent, moral people turning a blind eye and holding their tongues as atrocities unfolded. That horrifying reality spurred him to write urgent warnings from his prison cell before his execution, imploring others to wake up. It is as if he were shouting from behind bars to anyone who would listen. Wake up. See what is happening to your minds and morals under this spell. Don't be complicit. His words were meant not just for his time, but for every time and place where people fall silent and stop thinking for themselves. What exactly was Bonhoeffer's warning from behind those prison bars? He was sounding an alarm that a peculiar kind of stupidity was overtaking his society, not a lack of knowledge, but a loss of critical thought and moral sense. He argued this stupidity is more dangerous than outright evil. An evil person at least knows they're doing wrong. You can potentially expose evil or fight it. But a stupid person in this sense doesn't listen to reason or facts. They don't even see what they're part of. They can commit heinous acts or enable them while believing they're just doing what's right or necessary. Bonhoeffer observed that logic and facts failed to pierce the bubble these people lived in. Confront them with evidence, and they simply push it aside. They become impervious to reality. It's not that they become slow-witted. They might actually be clever in twisting arguments. But their judgment, empathy, and willingness to question authority are all shut down. They become, as he said, defenseless against whatever their leaders tell them. It's almost as if they're under a spell. This is Bonhoeffer's paradox. Intelligent, good people rendered foolish and dangerous in the service of evil. Knowledge and intellect don't automatically protect us from it. Some of the most educated figures in Germany went along with Nazi atrocities. Their learning didn't prevent moral collapse. In some cases, it just gave them more elaborate justifications for the unjustifiable. It wasn't stupidity in the IQ sense. It was the decision, conscious or not, to stop thinking critically and morally. Why does this happen? Bonhoeffer suspected that power itself warps thinking on both ends. People in power surround themselves with yes men and grow blind to their own errors. People under power often yield their autonomy for the sake of belonging or safety. Leaders get no honest feedback. Followers give up responsibility. Together, they create a closed loop where real thinking and accountability evaporate. The result, as he saw, was a society descending into madness without most individuals ever deciding to be evil. It's like a mass sleepwalk, a dream state where everyone plays their part without reflection. He wanted desperately for people to snap out of it, to wake from this deadly sleep. He believed only an act of liberation could break such a spell. Perhaps a great shock, a personal crisis, or a spiritual awakening would jolt the stupid person back to their senses. Until then, ordinary persuasion could rarely reach them. It's a sobering warning. Human beings, no matter how smart, are not immune to this kind of moral darkness. In fact, the danger is greatest when we assume, "I'm too wise to ever fall for that." Bonhoeffer knew anyone, under the wrong influences, can slip into this fog. He saw professors, pastors, and professionals, people who prided themselves on intellect and ethics, become mouthpieces of Nazi nonsense, hardly recognizing what they'd turned into. So he urged everyone to see this capacity in ourselves and be on guard. We must watch not just for obvious evil out there, but for that quiet internal switch that can flip inside us when we stop thinking and just go along. The moment you accept a convenient lie because it's comfortable, or obey without question because it's easier, that is when the dimming begins. And no one is too smart or too virtuous to be exempt from that, unless they constantly resist. Bonhoeffer's voice comes to us across time asking, will you stay awake when others fall under the spell? Will you think for yourself and speak? Or will you allow your mind to be lulled to sleep just because it's easier? By now, you might be thinking about your own life and wondering, am I really immune to this? It's tempting to say, of course, I'm an independent thinker. I'd never fall into that trap. But that confidence can itself be a trap. The moment we assume we're above influence is the moment we stop guarding against it. The idea that intellect alone is immunity is comforting but false. Your intelligence and education arm you with tools, but they don't make you invulnerable. If you let comfort, fear, or pride lull you, those tools will rust. Moral blindness often afflicts those who once believed themselves good and incorruptible. It creeps in through complacency and unexamined loyalty. It feeds on the thought, I could never be like that, because that thought shuts the door on self-reflection. How can you keep your eyes open? Start with humility. Admit that you are human and fallible, that given the right pressure you too might rationalize or stay silent. This isn't something to fear. It's something to be mindful of. When you accept your vulnerability, you can actively work to counter it. Keep asking yourself, especially when it's hard, is this truly right? Or am I telling myself it's right because it's easier? Recall your day's choices. Were there moments you went along with something that felt wrong? Why? What stopped you from resisting? Honest self-questioning is a steady light that keeps your mind from dimming. Nurture your conscience like a living thing. Feed it with real conversations, with diverse perspectives, with moments of quiet reflection. Seek friends and colleagues who challenge you for the right reasons, those who will tell you when you're making excuses. They are precious mirrors that help you see yourself clearly. It may sting your ego to be challenged, but that sting keeps you awake and alert. It keeps your intelligence aligned with truth. Practice small acts of courage in everyday life. If you can speak up about small injustices, you train your soul for the larger tests. The next time you witness something wrong, try not to look away. Even acknowledging it silently to yourself is a start, because you're refusing to lie to yourself. And when you can, lend your voice or action to make it right. Courage is like a muscle. It grows with use. The more you exercise it, the stronger your integrity becomes when it's under pressure. There's a spiritual element too, a sense of connection to something higher than any worldly authority. Whether it's faith in a higher power or an unwavering commitment to core human values, hold on to a guiding principle that transcends the crowd. For Bonhoeffer, it was his faith and his belief in justice and compassion. For you, it might be a deep love of truth, a devotion to empathy, or simply the principle of treating others as you'd want to be treated. When the world tries to cloud your judgment, let that core principle be your North Star. Picture your mind as a candle flame. Power is like a wind that can make it flicker. Conformity is like a glass jar that can suffocate it. But awareness and courage are the hands that shield that flame, helping it burn steadily. Tend to that flame deliberately. Trim the wick by shedding your arrogance, add fuel by learning and reflecting, and protect it from the gales of propaganda and peer pressure. Do this, and your intelligence will not die out. It will shine on, illuminating not only your path, but perhaps serving as a beacon for others in the dark. In the end, Bonhoeffer's paradox is both a warning and a call to awaken. Yes, intelligence can wither under the weight of power and fear, but it doesn't have to. The same human mind that can fall asleep can also choose to wake up. Every day, in ways big or small, you face that choice: to go along mindlessly or to stand mindfully, to stay silent or to speak your truth with integrity. This journey isn't easy. It's a slow-burning effort, a lifelong vigilance, but it is profoundly meaningful. Each time you choose to think for yourself, to question the easy answers, to act with integrity even when it's hard, you keep the flame alive. You show that our great gifts of intellect and conscience are not just ornaments, but guiding lights toward a better life. So stay awake, stay humble, keep your heart soft and your mind sharp. In doing so, you honor Dietrich Bonhoeffer's warning and the sacrifice of all who have stood for truth. And you become, in your own quiet way, part of the antidote to the very paradox we've explored, living proof that even in the midst of power or fear, a person can remain truly intelligent and truly alive.